Hi, everyone. This is Francisco Hattinson, Vice President of VOQUZ in America. Welcome to this webinar with our partner, AOF Solutions. We'll start in some minutes. I still see some people dialing in, so please be patient and give us 3 minutes more for the rest of the participants to dial in. This webinar will be recorded, so you'll have the opportunity to listen it afterwards again if you want to. You'll also get a copy of the slide set of this webinar, and you have the opportunity of sending us your questions in the meantime, and we will look onto them and try to answer them during the webinar or afterwards. Should we not manage to answer all questions, we'll gladly answer them via email after the webinar. So please stay with me for 3 more minutes and we'll start over. Thank you. So hello again and welcome to our webinar today, how to stay in front of SAP by using software asset management. Let me first of all present you with Michael Mosley, our partner from AOF Solutions in Austin, Texas. He will be showing and talking with us about his experience in the area of software asset management. Why is this something important? Why is this something that could help your IT department move on and find additional funding for other projects? How to negotiate with SAP, how to treat software asset management, and something to put you in a better position when you're managing your SAP contracts. Hello, Michael. Please go on.
Hello, and thank you so much. Welcome everyone to this, we'll call it a special edition of this webinar with VOQUZ and AOF Solutions. I am Michael Mosley, and what we want to kind of focus on too is how to effectively use a business partner to meld into your organization to help you with this discipline. So as you saw already, or as Francisco already stated here, we're going to cover a few things here. And pretty much already covered all that for us. So thank you so much. So a little bit about us, real quick. We've got a very diverse background, spanning military service, teaching, also a little bit of music and project management, obviously with some SAP in there, involving contract extraction, management, problem solving. We have a very good staff with about 25 years of working in with SAP, including basis, security, implementations, upgrades, performance and tuning. So I've done a little bit of all in that area. And we've also worked a lot around in the space design and with engineering and such. So got a little bit of experience there to help you out. Now I want to go ahead and let Francisco tell you a little bit about VOQUZ.
Thank you very much, Michael. That's very kind of you. So VOQUZ is a company that started in the 80s in Germany, in Berlin, and working as a systems integrator. Now, around 2010, we purchased a company specialized in software asset management tools for SAP especially. And this is when we entered this area and started, first of all, offering tools that help you understand what you're doing with SAP, how much of a usage you have of what you purchased. And with time, we built our own advisory department, because in some countries, we just didn't find partners like AOF to support us there. Now, in the south of the US, we have AOF who supports us in preparing audits with SAP, negotiating with SAP, and basically understanding the outcome of such tools as we do in other geographical areas. Today, we are the single provider who has both software asset management tools for SAP and the knowledge and the specialty of taking these outcomes and helping you transform this into real business outcomes. So trying to help you avoiding spend unnecessarily in SAP things that you don't really need, and understanding how much of what you have you're really using. Thank you very much, Michael. Go on, please. So talking about the clients of our group, we have clients among SAP users, and that means our clients, they start somewhere at the 300-400 users in their SAP systems. Our biggest client today has 1.2 million users in their systems and more than 300 single servers that they are managing. Now, this is not an easy task, and the more servers you have, the more difficult it gets to cope with the complexity and things that you find there. But basically, clients are found within all branches, as many as SAP users. We do every year alone around 100 to 150 projects with our partners, around 500 projects. So 500 touch points where our people get to see SAP contracts, get to see the pricing of SAP, special agreements with SAP. And this is the knowledge that people like AOF bring to you, and where they can help you better understanding how to cope with SAP's things. Biggest negotiation we've participated in was a negotiation about $1.8 billion US, helping a bigger company finding out which were the right products to contract with SAP, what was the right contract model to choose, talking about the pricing, the different deployment options of it, and so on. So this is who we are. We have also some value-added resellers, people who, apart from helping us in projects, do have tools that interconnect with ours, like Matrix 42 or License Dashboard, Xensem, etc. This kind of tools that not only let you look into SAP, but also additional systems like Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, etc. Please go on, Michael. I fear I have some delay. Michael, do you want to present this this slide? Do you want me to go on?
No, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. So our main areas of activity are license optimization within SAP, authorizations management, which means mostly user provisioning, segregation of duties, roles and authorizations with it. And on the licensing area, we of course have to touch every licensing area like users, digital access, engines, S/4HANA license migration, etc. Thing is, basically, tools are nice, and it is necessary today to have a tool to help you manage all of this complexity. On the other hand, tools alone are not enough. You need to understand what to do with those tools. And now that you have your reports, now that you have your usage analysis, you need to start and try to match this with your contracts. And this is why our partners and ourselves, we are offering advisory services to transform these findings into real cost reductions, avoiding of audit findings that lead you to pay maybe things that you hadn't budgeted, better understand transformations like the S/4HANA contract migration, things like that. These are things where we can help. And this shows basically the focus of our product portfolio, everything that helps you to get the biggest return on investment out of what you have spent with SAP. Go on.
Okay, so for our first poll, we want to ask you, where are you in your SAP SAM life? Are you wondering how you spell SAP SAM? Are you just starting? Have you hit a roadblock? Are you doing well, but you think maybe you could be doing better? Or are you in possession of ultimate cosmic powers and you've mastered it?
And there we go. Please tell us where you are in your software asset management development.
All right, we're almost halfway there.
And there we go. So here you go.
Okay, looking at this, we got 50% of you, you're just starting out. Well, I think you've come to the right place. We've got 30% looking at good, but think you could be better. Excellent, excellent. And looks like a couple of you maybe have hit a roadblock. Okay, we got at least someone who is, how do you spell that? I love it. I love
it. Good.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dig into this. And so to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music here, what is software asset management? Well, to elaborate, SAM is designated to, or designed to bring down costs typically incurred throughout the life cycle of an asset. And this can include licensing, support, and maintenance costs. At the same time, SAM is also aimed at minimizing financial, operational, and legal risks. So this should be included in your life cycle of software assets, right? So bottom line is essentially the bottom line, to maximize the value of your software asset and minimize risks. And so SAM as a business practice. Why consider SAM a business practice? Well, obviously, the goal of a firm, right, is to be profitable. And as we just stated, SAM is aimed at minimizing finance, operational, and legal risks, all of which are important to the success of a business. But what are those goals with SAM? Regulatory compliance, ensuring that contractual agreements are met like any other industry standard to avoid paying those additional costs. We don't want that. You've got risk mitigation, so again, avoiding penalties, cost reduction, which can take a considerable amount of analysis, as of course with cost avoidance, also with a considerable amount of analysis, and that can be a little more difficult to relate the value. And you got to have visibility, and that's just ensuring that you actually have good visibility into the network or the environment to ensure that when you make those decisions, you are indeed making an educated decision.
Can you give me a second, Mike?
Certainly.
And just jump in or the last slide, what you were showing, because so basic as it seems, we are, after 10, 12 years of working in that area, we still find every day those situations. Now, regulatory compliance, we are working with many government organizations who still are at risk with their licensing situation. And of course, they don't want to, but basically it's mostly a situation of lack of control. Now, as a government, you need to be there, and there is basically an option. But today, public companies are audited too. So this is really important. Now, audit findings, not complying with your contracts, can put you in a situation of risk, and a risk that can even lower the value of your company, independently from the fact whether your company is a small one or a bigger one. Regulatory compliance and contract compliance is really, really important. Now, cost reduction. How important is cost reduction in this area of SAP licensing? Just today, the last analysis that I did for a company with 9,000 users showed that this company was spending 43% of too much in user licenses. So you can imagine how much money we are talking about. Imagine you buy 100,000 licenses and you have 43,000 licenses too much. And this is the reality that we are confronted with every day. Cost avoidance. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe already, we had a client with a digital access risk situation that added up to 170 million US dollars. Now, they had around 600 applications connected to SAP. This is not the story you want to be telling your CFO. Now, this is exactly what we found there, and now we had to help the client getting out of these situations. Visibility is what was exactly lacking there. This is something that everyone knew might be a problem, but didn't really know to what extent this could be a problem. 170 million is something that can totally change the business results, so the bottom line, as Michael said, of your year-end results. So is this simple, that what we are talking about? It is really, but still software asset management is something that is very much out of control in many companies, and this is why we are insisting in this, in gaining control of this basically very simple tasks, but that still have to be understood and have to be taken care of. Thank you, Mike.
No, excellent, great examples too. We've seen a lot of that too as well. So we want to look at it now as why, again, a business practice. So and how do we calculate these financial values, or you could say return on investment, right? While there are values there that are very easy to plug into a formula and calculate, you know, what the outcome is going to be. Not everything is so black and white. So, for example, once you've had an audit and you've had your asset management under control, how do you measure the benefit of an audit with true-ups or with fines that did not happen? And to that end, software rationalization, like Francisco was saying, going through and finding out your number of licenses and changing maybe how you use them even. It's difficult to make that comparison from year to year to those types of changes. And so therefore, it is extremely important to have clearly defined and agreed upon returns on investment and cost benefits. And as you can see here from the slide, we talk about some of those easy things to calculate and some of the hard things to calculate there. So let's move into the next poll here. If you've had the opportunity to have a wonderful experience of an audit, how did it go? Was it smooth, inexpensive, and non-stressful? Yes, everything went according to plan, or no, not even close. And see the numbers coming in.
And there we go.
There we go. That's interesting, a 50-50 split. Those of you on the yes, everything went according to plan, more power to you, because that's generally not the case.
Well, yes and no. You know what, Michael? So what does it mean? Yes, everything went according to plan. I will understand it so that you didn't have to pay anything, basically, and you were in control. Now, what I find very often is that people get to not have to pay anything after an SAP audit because they are strongly over licensed. And of course, I'm not meaning every one of you is, but fact is, in many occasions, clients are basically happy because they didn't have to pay anything after an SAP audit. I can tell you, SAP drives audit to promote sales, to improve sales. So if you're in a situation after an audit where you didn't have to pay anything, you should start questioning your contract and see if this is really because you have an amazing management, which can be, of course, or just because you're strongly overpaying, which can happen too, and we see in frequent occasions.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's exactly what I was going to say too. Stealing my thunder there, but that's okay. So let's look at this from a cost modeling idea. And like any other business practice, the cost to run the practice should not exceed the financial returns it can achieve, right? So let's look at this scenario. Just a real quick scenario that a manufacturing company was looking to go out and try to take care of some of their top 5 publishers. And they wanted to first look at doing an in-house solution. And in order to do that, you can see they had to make sure they had the licensing, they had to have consulting with the publisher, and of course they had to assign full-time employees to take care of this project. And if you look at the numbers there, in this particular instance, it ended up being over $622,000. Well, after looking at that, they thought, okay, what happens if we go and outsource this? And interesting thing, when you think about that, is now you're looking at taking in someone who already has perhaps some sort of familiarity with the publishers. So, hey, they can get a discount for you on the subscription. Still required, but you get a discount. Still got to have some of that publisher consulting, so you can't avoid that. But the big thing here is you can avoid the full-time employees you have assigned to it. And in like this particular example, they only needed 1 employee, but only for half the time, because the folks that came in for outsourcing took care of that, right? And so you can see the delta there from 622,000 to 265,000. And let that sink in for a second. That becomes very important. And in any business practice, your cost to run should not exceed the returns. So, and as all as IT professionals here, it's very difficult for us in IT because IT has always been identified for the longest time as that that ambiguous black hole in the budget, right?
So we thought we'd put something together of the things that we are finding today when we speak with CIOs, CFOs of different companies. What has happened over the last year, this year? What is happening in companies? We are advising now around 3 different companies that I know of in my near area of the company who have increased cost constraints. People who definitely need to decrease the cost of their SAP contracts. Happen is that it may happen by decommissioning products, optimizing discounts, canceling things, whatever may happen. They're at risk, and they need to definitely do everything that they can to reduce their costs. S/4HANA migration is still an issue. So 1-2 years ago, time happened so quickly. Many SAP decided to move the target for S/4HANA migration from 2025 up to 2027, and even with an increased support of 3% up to 2030. And with that, we thought, well, fine, many companies have more time. But what are we seeing right now? What we have seen so far is that companies have totally postponed this. So when 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, everyone was in big worry, let's do something, we need to make a decision. What are we gonna do? We see most companies right now postponing their migration to S/4HANA unless there is a proposal on the table from SAP side then that brings them to just change the contract, to renegotiate conditions and use the time. But mostly when a CIO comes up to his CFO and says, well, S/4HANA is going to cost us 20% more, the first question of a CFO is, and what is the business case for this? Why should we be doing this? Why should we spend more on licenses? How is S/4HANA going to improve our business? What is the contribution? What is the return on investment of that? And so CIOs are trying to build the business case and see if there is one that justifies this additional spending. Indirect usage, since we are doing this kind of projects all of the time, you get a bit blind in that, and I get the image like everyone knows of it. No, I just had last week 2 conversations with CIOs that didn't really know what digital access or indirect usage is and how this is a risk for their company. So something you need to take care of and understand what is happening there. Many clients haven't still dimensioned this risk, and at least you should understand what's in front of you and how can we cope with that. Deployment and contract management in the cloud area. Now, let's start with contract management. SAP, it is not so long ago that they have started not only bringing out technology that is capable of being run in the cloud with hyperscalers like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, but also having to set up a new set of contracts, for example, the cloud global terms and conditions, which are problematic new contracts. Let's start just an example with different kinds of SLAs that not always match the expectations of clients, either because they are just too expensive or because the operational security and stability that they are used to from the bigger companies, it is not included in the standard offerings that they have. Now, that's understandable since SAP is basically trying to sell their services and software to companies all over the world with totally different expectations, but also companies that go from 1,000 users up to 500,000 users or even more. So in that situation, how can the SLA be the right one for everyone? They have different levels, but this is a problem. Another example, please look deeply into your global terms and conditions when it comes to data protection and data security. I was just checking those use rights or those global terms and conditions for a client and seeing that SAP finds it acceptable to drive benchmarks and analysis based on your own private data. Now, to my knowledge, this is even in Germany, where the company comes from, a forbidden practice. Maybe not in all countries, but you should definitely look into this and understand, is this something that is acceptable for you, or do you need to negotiate your terms and conditions with SAP too? Infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is a big business. Clients are spending a lot on infrastructure, servers, network, etc., security. And this way, SAP is looking to increase their business volume by offering you not only the software, but also the infrastructure. Either own infrastructure from SAP or just subcontracting it from the named hyperscalers, IBM, HP, in offerings like HEC, HANA Enterprise Cloud, RISE, the new offering that came out this year, where they connect the infrastructure with special product offerings and advisory offerings, on-premise offerings, cloud offerings, etc. Since SAP is also new on this business since, I don't remember, maybe 3-5 years, really. They're trying to understand what part of this business does work, how do we do that, with whom do we do that, how do we organize when we have, for example, HANA Enterprise Cloud, a system where you have an only voice, an only partner at SAP who manages everything, your application maintenance, your software, your licensing, your infrastructure, etc. How do we manage to distribute information correctly, to make sure that backups are done correctly, to make sure that the IT operations and data center operations, cloud operations are running well. Now, the offerings are changing all of the time, and the quality of those offerings are sadly changing also all of the time. So hold an eye on that. Speak with analysts, speak with other clients, with partners like AOF to understand what are the differences in deployments, what is the right suit for you, and how to cope with that. And then again, today, data lakes and business intelligence is getting more and more relevant to try and refine the accuracy of analysis that help you driving your company, driving your business better. And so, as for HANA, SAP is part of the data, a big part of the data that lands in those data lakes and business intelligence systems. This has implications for your licensing, implications that go from some $100,000 up to several $1 million, depending on do we now need to change from a full use runtime version to full use version? Do you need open hub? Do you need data services? Do you need PI or PO? What add-ons do you need to really drive the data into the data lake, analyze it again? Which tools are you enabled to use or not? So we have a lot of clients asking us for those use cases, trying to understand what they are entitled to do and what not. So these are the things that we are mostly hearing from clients today this year. Please, Michael, you go. So when we talk about software asset management and we get to speak with the clients that start with us, what do we mostly find? Now, this graph in the middle shows basically people who are under licensed, going from minus 80% to some plus 80% and over. And you see the frequency on the y-axis. That means basically what is this? How many of the people have the correct licensing? And you see the small area in the middle. These are the people who have their licensing correct. And the other ones are either over licensed or under licensed. This is what we find today. This is an excerpt of around 50 projects that we did last year, just chosen quickly, no big segregation there. And so we find basically 60% of clients are over licensed, in opposite to 30% of clients who are under licensed and so at audit risk. Only 10% are in control. So the average shelfware, so software that they are paying maintenance for, but is not in use, has a value of 2 million euros. So it's costing 400,000 euros of costs in average every year. And then when we talk about under licensing, this has gone up with digital access by a lot. In the past, this value was below the million. Today it is 1.5 million euros because of the digital access findings that are not cleared and regulated yet. Please go on. So coming back to deployment and to the different offerings that SAP has today and what you can do with your systems. It took us ourselves, who are professionals in this part, time to understand what do we have in options here and what different aspects do they offer. Because basically you see mostly marketing material, you don't get to see what are the hints, what are the hurdles here in this area. Now, basically when we talk about deployment, we have in general on-premise versions and cloud versions. This is from the software perspective, something that is very often used, those terms. So on-premise meaning in general that you manage your licenses, and private and public edition means they are deployed on the cloud somehow. Now, what aspects are the ones which make out a deployment? A deployment means, first of all, on the software side, what version of the software are you getting? SAP has mainly two big versions, which is the on-premise version, independently from the fact whether this S4HANA is deployed on the cloud or on-premise. But we are talking of the S4HANA full functional scope version, and opposite to the S4HANA cloud version that you only find in the public edition on S4HANA when you are sharing your servers with other clients. This is a limited version of S4HANA. It doesn't have the same functionality. You can't customize it. SAP will take care of maintenance. They will take care of updates, but you have less flexibility. Then we have the questions on whether do we have a subscription contract or do we have a perpetual contract? Do we have the question on whether you have a separate software contract or a combined contract, which includes both infrastructure and software. And then we have different kinds of service levels, the ones that you can define yourselves when making setting up your data center with your own staff or with a hyperscaler or with SAP. In some cases, those are predefined service levels that you can choose from a different set, or you have fixed service levels, or you have totally custom service levels. Now, the infrastructure can be today driven even on HANA Enterprise Cloud or in your on-premise version in all different variations. So you can contract the HANA Enterprise Cloud and still have your software on your own data center, or with one of the three big hyperscalers, or with an SAP data center. And on the other hand, you could just stick with your perpetual license contract, install it at Google's cloud, but you do your own contract with Google. You keep control of what Google is doing and negotiate directly with Google. Also, of course, having to take care of two contracts, one with Google and one with SAP. Now, the S/4HANA Cloud Private Edition means SAP will set up a single server for you or more of them that are only and exclusively used by your company. And in that way, you can basically decide how much performance are we using here. You have a more certain level of performance since you don't share your servers with others. S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition is the option where you have a real software as a service, and this is purchased as a subscription, and you share servers with other companies. Now, especially for your small subsidiaries, or especially for very small companies, this is a very interesting option where you have a lot of flexibility, don't have to take care of many more things. But of course, you need to stick with SAP's process model. There is not much of a chance to change or customize the software on that option here. So deployment options, and they are not complete because SAP just introduced RISE with SAP, and we are getting this question all the time. What is RISE with SAP? Now, RISE with SAP brings complexity still up a tick. How does it? SAP RISE or RISE with SAP, as it is called, is a combined offering of infrastructure, a subscription-based software model deployed on a cloud, and then with specific additional software packages like Ariba on top of that, whether you need it or not, especially with a limited amount of Ariba, so it doesn't match everyone's need. And you have some digitalization advisory offerings and business intelligence offerings that you can use there. Question is, since this is a bundle, does this bundle meet your requirements, or is this just a marketing gag that doesn't meet your real requirements? We haven't included this yet on this graph. We will within short, but since this is even a product bundle, we are still struggling on whether this belongs here or not. Thank you very much, Micah, go on.
Okay, so with all that said, bringing it down in more generic terms, how do you get to this end? And one of the challenges is to be able to set those goals as one of them. But how are these goals going to be effective? Well, the goals must be discernible, financial goals, and obviously we want to do better. But a statement just saying that it's just too vague. You might say we need to improve the ROI. Sure, but how? It is the specific how that should be the goal. And I've heard this many times, we must reduce costs, especially with everything that Francisco was just telling us about. Well, that's a great idea, but again, how do you do that? You got to put those things into writing. So, some firms fall into this trap, and then they say, using the tools, that's going to be their saving grace. And we've talked about that a little bit. But you can't depend on the tools, because sometimes, guess what? They don't work exactly like you thought they were going to. And why is that? Well, you don't always have the expertise, right, to know the tool inside and out. And I have an example, but I'm going to try to save some time here. We're getting kind of short on time. That some tools take a long time to understand and be able to use. And then, of course, sometimes you have to have retraining, because how often do you do, for example, an audit with SAP? Using a tool maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. And then the cost it takes to understand the tool, be trained on it, you need to take that into consideration as well. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on here a little bit. So again, one of the easiest things to address is setting those goals, but like we just spoke, they've got to be real. And how do you do that? Again, you need to have rules that are defined with no ambiguity and with a set value. And anytime you can actually use a calculated value and show that that's going to be important too. So for example, if you do A and B, you can calculate C happens. And when you do this, put it in words, put it in writing with the formulas, and attain agreements with all the stakeholders. That's going to pay dividends down the road. And because values can also mean very different things to different people, right? And we've seen this too, and you probably have as well, where maybe you're sitting in a meeting and someone uses the term return on investment. And when you walk away from the meeting, you find out that that might mean a little something different to you than it does to somebody else. Some people think cost avoidance is not really savings because it's avoiding something rather than reducing costs. And then there are times when you can say you reduce the cost on the publisher like SAP, and then someone can argue, well, sure, but we grew, and so therefore our cost actually increased. Yes, but because you took care of that in the beginning, you're spending less per capita now, and we found our ways and we reduced the expenses. So therein lies the trap and why it is so important to capture goals in writing. We'll go ahead and pass the next poll and move on just a little bit because I want to just kind of getting closer to time here. To summarize so far, SAM should be a business practice focused on the financial outcomes of your firm. And Francisco gave us a great demonstration there of how this can really get out of control. And not a lot of people are getting it right, as you can see. So the return on investment must be clearly defined, measurable, in writing, and approved, which also provides, by the way, continuity if you have changes in personnel or leadership. It's often financially useful to call in help, which is not an uncommon practice. And so this brings us to the importance of finding an organization, a consultancy, who is willing to work with you as a partner. And I'll say that again because it's that important. To work with you as a partner to address these needs, especially with your SAP audits, right? So bringing in a consultant can be tremendously helpful to your bottom line. And think of the examples we've already given. When you bring in a consultant, you're getting the expertise on loan. It's like, say, if you want to own a yacht, but you don't wish to have, spend all the money to get it and the upkeep and the place to keep it, and you're only going to be able to use it a few times a year, get a timeshare. Same thing as bringing in some help. Or you want to have that condo down in the Bahamas, but again, you just don't want to have the upkeep to keep that going too, the lingering costs, and you're only gonna be able to go down there a few times a year, get a timeshare. Same thing with bringing in a partner. And in addition, because the consultant is not tied to your internal operations, they are strictly focused on the SAM, or more specifically, your SAP audit. They have no other duties outside, no other responsibilities to worry about, so they can get the task done more efficiently and quicker than someone you might have on staff. Now, I'm not trying to say that you want to replace all your folks in these functional areas. That's just not practical. But as stated, it is a very common business practice, and most meaningful departments use some sort of help or outsourcing. I mean, look at your human resources departments and HR services. A lot of companies even outsource the whole thing for that. And then of course you've got facilities maintenance and stuff as well. But in the same way, the partner augments your existing practice or department and handles the tasks you don't wish to invest money in or staff and to maintain. So again, when you look at the SAP, the budget is different from the rest of IT, right? Yes, SAP is overall company IT, but it's usually considered separate from and managed differently from the rest of IT. I mean, think of it this way: if someone loses an Excel license, their whole day, their career, their life is not going to come to a standstill. But if SAP goes down, nothing works and people stop working, right? So the Different license models also can cause issues. What is the difference between a professional or a limited professional or business expert? The budget. If your company grows, and all companies should grow, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of being in business. The budget over time will grow, and you'll need additional licenses, right? And so for most organizations, how that growth affects your SAP landscape has been a mystery. And as you saw from that chart earlier, not a lot of people are getting it right. And numerous companies are getting on the bandwagon for software asset management for other big publishers like Microsoft, Adobe, Oracle, Salesforce, and IBM. When they have these in place, they realize generally there is one big hole in their software asset management profile, and that generally ends up being, you guessed it, SAP. And with all the things we've seen, the court cases, compliance needs, the licensing requests, this becomes a much larger requirement for a company. And Francisco already talked about some of the things, the dollar amounts that some people have already incurred. So what kind of things should you be looking for? Well, let's point out the LAW report. And many companies consider the LAW as a compliance tool. That the LAW reports, how many users, how many user types, what software, what applications you have, all this kind of stuff, and then that is sent off to SAP to validate what you use. Now, believe it or not, you can look this up. SAP has stated that the LAW, the License Administration Workbench report, is intended to gather audit data and is not a compliance tool. Let me say that again. It's intended to gather audit data and is not a compliance tool. So every time you send off the report to SAP, you're sending them everything they need to conduct an audit. Let me let that sink in for a second, because this includes any kind of indicators like we've already talked about, indirect access, indirect usage, and any other kind of anomalies. If SAP sees your LAW and they see something, they can then file and will send you a letter stating you're subject to an audit. And it doesn't matter if it's unscheduled or not. And guess what? If they do that, you're still liable for your scheduled one. Yay. So obviously, we need to get these costs under control. And as discussed earlier, we want to flatten that curve, and we want to avoid being forced to buy things we don't really need to buy. Or like you saw in some cases, we can find where we actually have too much stuff. So if I may, in the last few minutes here, let me suggest a partnership like ours with VOQUZ and AOF. We utilize the SAMQ so that we can reduce the human error, we increase efficiency, and we improve historical accuracy. The longer we can be in place, the more historical data we get better looks at the trends of how you're utilizing the system and how to better match your licenses for what you are actually doing. So working with VOQUZ and SAMQ, we ensure our partners like yourself get everything you need. We also have the ability and the knowledge to engage in the managed services or training, whichever fits your needs, to allow your people to do the tasks if that's what you want to have. Or we can come back on a scheduled basis and make sure that your licensing and your landscape and your settings are all where they need to be. For audit defense and negotiations, we can provide tips, hints, and if needed, we can even be available during your audit to assist you in countering SAP claims when they say you're not compliant. And real important here, before we try to wrap this up, getting back to costs, a savings of 30% can be difficult, but many companies feel as though they have no choice in their negotiations. And sometimes they don't even realize they can negotiate, right? It's been described as a Stockholm Syndrome. And so they do not want to get in SAP's bad side or on their blacklist, and they believe SAP is there to help them, that they are a good partner. But remember, SAP is out to make money any way they can, make no mistake. And since many companies do not have a process in place, they cannot effectively counter any of these claims that SAP makes. And the curve of rising costs just keeps going up. So the question is, do you really know exactly what you need, as Francisco also said? And remember this, and there's some other cases out there with the legal finance and penalties, they can be extreme. A major car manufacturing not too long ago avoided a potential 34 million American dollars of negative findings by implementing a SAM for SAP. A pharmaceutical company, they avoided 680,000 US dollars on a true up, and another company, another case, $3.6 million. And this is all just about for just going in to seeing what's in your landscape, checking your licenses, and seeing what you actually need. So again, reducing costs, and if you're paying too much, using SAMQ, we can find that. Help keep you stay legal and compliant, all of which we've already covered.
Michael, if you allow me a little question answering here, we got a question from a client that's interesting here, and this reflects directly on what you were saying about understanding what you have. And we were asked if we have a service to compare the actual licensing situation of a client towards the RISE offering and what's included in that. So basically, making a decision towards RISE, is this something for me or not? And first of all, let me say, coming back to what Michael was explaining, don't ever sign anything you don't understand. And RISE might have been, for many people, and still is, something that they don't understand. Now, for 3 months, we have been seeing a lot of advertisements around and marketing around RISE, and this is the new solution, and this is the new way of approaching clients and making sure digitalization is happening, etc., etc. Sounds good, but doesn't tell me what is it, how much is it worth, is it something for me? Now, this is exactly the example. Now, after 3 months of listening to marketing messages, we finally are seeing the first presentations from SAP that exactly describe what is included, sadly not how much of it is included in it. So as said in the beginning, we know exactly what kind of packages we have within RISE software packages, what kind of contracting we have, and advisory services that are included in it. And this is exactly the task you must do alone or with our support, which is basically measuring, okay, what is my contract today? What do I have a right to? What are the deliverables? And what are the deliverables of RISE, and how much are they worth? So if they say I'm getting advisory, I'm getting digitalization advisory, how much is this worth for me? If they say I have access to an online portal to help me assess something, how much is this worth for me? If I get the Ariba licenses, well, they have a price and there is a metric behind it. Do I need them? Is this enough for me or not? And this is exactly the math behind the model that you must do, as said, happily with our support. If you don't need it, then gladly by yourself, but make the calculation to understand every single structure, every single scenario. In the end, a contract has a financial part of it, a financial scenario behind it. If you don't have all the facts that you need, either ask SAP for them to provide them to you and make a proper business case assessment, or let us help you understand what is the business case behind it and does this match our needs today. Here you go, Michael, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll close up, and if anybody's got any more questions, go ahead and post them in there real fast. We've got just a couple minutes, but I want to leave you with this very last thing that I hope you can remember as a key. If you can present a data-driven argument to SAP, your success during an audit increases dramatically. And to do that, again, you plan it, you prepare it, and you perform it. You repeat this process, and you'll be much more successful in dealing with anything with SAP. And if there are no other questions, hey, listen, I want to thank everybody for coming out, giving a listen. I hope we provided something interesting or new to you, or maybe just refresh something at least. And look us up. We hope that we can be there for you. If you have anything else, just go ahead and send them in there. We'll address them after the fact. Francisco?
Yes, thank you very much, Michael, for your contribution and for your help today. And as Michael said, we are here for you. If you have questions, if you just have any technical questions, want to understand if you have an issue or not, if you need help or not, we'll be gladly helping you and trying to understand your situation. Just invite us to a brief one-on-one conversation with Michael, with me, and we'll try to help you there and try to understand where you are and support you there. Thank you very much for taking the time of listening to us. Thank you for attending today. Wish you all the best with your SAP licensing, and please, if you think you need some support, we are here for you with AOF and VOQUZ Labs. Thank you. You have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye so far.